Okay, well, we want to look at response to Myles Ketelsen, part 2. The critics are afraid of questions. That's my title for this meeting tonight. The critics are afraid of questions. See, because if I misunderstand what Myles is saying, or if I misinterpret what he's saying, I don't want to do that. I want to do what's right. So help me understand this. Explain to me, answer my questions. That's what I would like. Because in these questions, they're very relevant. We're going to look at it anyway. But we welcome those in our studies. It's a doctrinal and theological investigative study of biblical issues. And that's what we're going to look at tonight. Now, I have a few things to say about this from Myles' response to my video. By the way, there's several more videos coming on this. But it's interesting because I believe Myles needs to come clean from his misrepresentation that Pastor Jeff has no clue what Dr. Kayser, Dr. Parker, and his position is. You see, Myles says one thing and his chart says something different. Myles needs to say what the chart does or change the chart, for the two are not the same thing. It's very important to understand that. Another point is Myles needs to explain and clarify the chart. Myles is contradictory and even contradicts himself. He needs to explain what he claims the chart means. Simply because someone misunderstands or doesn't get it does not mean it is all them. Myles should take some of the responsibility for his miscommunication and possibly a misunderstanding. Now, I want to point out three major things tonight in regard to Myles. Myles does three major things against my presentation, the last presentation I did. Number one, Myles says that I don't know Dr. Parker, Dr. Kayser, and his position. Now, I have his transcripts of his videos, and so there's a couple of them, 2 or 3 of them I'm going to look at tonight, and I actually put it there that you could look it up, and on his video, the documentation, where you could see exactly what I'm quoting that he's actually saying. So it's not my words, it's his words, and you could look at the transcript of the videos and you'll be able to pick that out. So number one, Myles says that I don't know Dr. Parker, Dr. Kayser, and his position. Myles' questions, number two, my questions are irrelevant or that he has already answered them. This is what he says, that my questions are irrelevant. And number three, I have misrepresented Myles' position. And I give, like I said, the documented source where Myles is saying these things in his video. Now, this is the videos I was actually dealing with right here. This is the videos. Now, this was between Myles and Sam and Greg. Greg is a Seventh-day Adventist, and Greg brought up some points about Myles and also Sam. And so this is actually the video, and this is the video that I was dealing with. I brought up some points. This video here, Sam has a video called Why Christians Keep Sunday. And so I watched this video by Sam, and this is what I was dealing with. This video right here, and also this video where Myles and Sam was dealing with Greg, who is a Seventh-day Adventist, Greg. All right? And the title of that video that I'm talking about, this very video, was called Another Bible Butchering SDA Exposed. And so Sam and Myles was dealing with Greg, and I said Greg is a Seventh-day Adventist. And so that's what this video is about. So I quote some from this video and I explain the difference. And then the video that Myles made against me, this last one he made, I also quote. So I get into that. All right? Now, this is the last video he made of me right here. This is the video that Myles made in a presentation against what I was saying. Okay? This right here. Now, I want to show you some things about Myles against Myles. And watch how this works. You'll see how this works. So I'm going to take Myles on one hand, and I'm going to take Myles on another hand, and you're going to see how Myles is against Myles. Let's see how that works. Now, Myles says this in his video, his last video against me. with the clown and all that kind of thing. He says this. He says, your questions that we're about to hear are completely irrelevant. Completely irrelevant. Now he says in this last video, he says, right here's where it's documented. If you went to his transcript and went right to those numbers, you would see exactly what he's saying. So listen carefully, and this is especially for the viewers because it's very important to understand this. It really is. So Myles says this, I do not teach a Sunday Sabbath creation. By the way, I put it in red letter for a highlighted point. That's what I did here. His is black letters, but I put the red so you can see what I'm going to deal with. So I do not teach a Sunday Sabbath creation. I'll save showing how this is a misrepresentation for when he launches into why he's saying this in reference to me. But it needs to be stated up front, Jeff, you are incorrect, sir. That's what he's saying. He looks at it as misrepresentations. I didn't claim there's a first-day Sabbath and a Sunday Sabbath in Genesis. Now he's making that very clear point. This is what he's saying. Okay? He says this, though. It's interesting. In his video of another Bible butchering SDA exposed, when he was dealing with Greg, he made this comment in that video. He said this, I'm waiting for the SDA that can make the case to me that Adam and Eve's first Sabbath was the seventh-day Sabbath. I brought this up to an SDA pastor a few months ago. He short-circuited right on the spot. He said, I've never thought about that. Yeah, hello. See, I took that as kind of a bragging moment by Myles. But of course he said, no, he wasn't bragging. He said that on his last video against me. And I took that statement as kind of bragging about it. And because he says here he short-circuited. Oh, what does that mean? He short-circuited. That Myles gave him some really amazing in-depth thought he'd never considered before. So, and then he goes on to say, yeah, hello. That's kind of interesting the way Myles did this. But let's get back to the statement. He says, I'm waiting for the SDA that can make the case to me that Adam and Eve's first Sabbath was the seventh-day Sabbath. Oh, viewers, let that point sink in your mind. Now, these are Myles' words, not mine. These are not my words. These are Myles' words. And think it through. Let this soak in right here. Now, I'm going to read it again. I want to repeat it again because I want to show you something that Myles says on his other video against me. I'm waiting for the SDA that can make the case to me that Adam and Eve's first Sabbath was the seventh-day Sabbath. On his video against me, he says, I didn't claim there's a first-day Sabbath and a Sunday Sabbath in Genesis. So Myles, just answer this question. So Myles, if Adam and Eve's first Sabbath was not the seventh-day Sabbath, and you didn't claim there's a first-day Sabbath and a Sunday Sabbath in Genesis, what Sabbath day did they keep? It would be interesting if the viewers would really let this question soak in. I'm going to read the question again. So Myles, if Adam and Eve's first Sabbath was not the seventh-day Sabbath, and you didn't claim there's a first-day Sabbath and a Sunday Sabbath in Genesis, what Sabbath day did they keep? I find this rather embarrassing for Myles. Very embarrassing for Myles. Because you see, both of these statements are his words, not mine. They're His words. So let this soak in, viewers. Let this soak in. Now let's go on. John Parker's book says the Sabbath transferred, talking about the new creation, which means we're not saying what you claim. I'm the you. Okay? It's me he's speaking about. Which means we're not saying what you claim we are saying. You need to study the way others are using words and terminology and understand what they mean by those words. Now, I want to understand. So I'm going to look at their words and their terminology. By the way, you know, the book that John Parker's wrote on the Sabbath transferred, I pulled it off my shelf in my library the other night, and I looked at it and I got it all marked up. It's all marked up from the front to the back. I marked all through that book, questions and underlining things, and it's amazing because he thinks I don't know what Dr. Parker taught on the transfer of the Sabbath, and we're going to see. So we're going to look at their terminology, their words. So I'm going to say this right from the start here. Myles has no clue what Dr. Parker is saying. I believe Myles is ignorant of what Dr. Parker is saying. So let's look at Dr. Parker and Dr. Kayser's terminology and words. We're going to look at their words very, very carefully. Okay, so here's what Dr. Parker says in his book. By the way, when Myles quoted Dr. Parker in his video against me, he certainly never said any of this. So we're going to see if I do understand Dr. Parker's position. Listen to what Dr. Parker says in his book. To meet the necessities of man, when he came into being, the Sabbath was instituted at the end of creation for rest and religious purpose. Now this is Dr. Parker. Now it'd be nice if Myles would quote these words and terminology from Dr. Parker. Okay? Myles, is Dr. Parker referring to the Sabbath for man, Adam, at the end of creation, that is man's, Adam's rest and religious purpose? Now, do you guys find that question irrelevant? Is that a question irrelevant, or is that an important question? What do you think? I think it's an important question based on the terminology and the words Dr. Parker's using. Myles, what word is Dr. Parker using to say what day the Sabbath was instituted? Now here's a question, and it is a very relevant question. You're not going to be able to deflect all my questions to say they're all irrelevant, nor is Myles going to be able to say he's answered all my questions. Because this is a very important question based on Dr. Parker's terminology and the words he uses. So I'm going to ask the question again. Myles, what word is Dr. Parker using to say what day the Sabbath was instituted? Well, let's read it. And this institution was placed on Saturday. Now, I find that very interesting. Dr. Parker tells us this institution was placed on Saturday. Now, notice what he goes on to say. To commemorate the creation which displays the attributes of its maker. So it's to commemorate the creation. Dr. Parker says it's Saturday. Saturday is the seventh day. So Myles, is Saturday the seventh day at the end of creation? Very important question to me. Now, it's interesting because if these guys say I misinterpret or misunderstand what they're saying or misrepresent what they're saying, it would seem to me they would want to explain to me so I can understand it. It would seem that that's what they would want to do. So instead of calling me names or clown's face and that kind of thing, it would seem to me they would want to explain to me so I understand this is what they're saying. Myles, what does Dr. Parker mean by the word Saturday? How do you understand the word Saturday? Because remember, he's saying, I don't know their words, I don't know their terminology, I misunderstand or am ignorant or whatever about it, but I want to know. And so I'm asking the question, how do you understand the word Saturday? Because that's exactly what Dr. Parker is saying. So it'd be nice if those who are watching this tonight would simply answer the question as well. These are Dr. Parker's words, not mine. Dr. Parker's position is Saturday was the day of the Sabbath at the end of creation for man for rest and religious purpose, and was from creation until a point in time, and that is the resurrection. This was Dr. Parker's position. I know exactly what he believed. So let's look at it carefully. The Sabbath was instituted at the end of creation. This institution was placed on Saturday. The Sabbath transferred from Saturday to Sunday at the resurrection. Now, here's the point. Myles, do tell the viewers so they know if this is your position. In other words, Myles, is your position the same thing as Dr. Parker? Because I do clearly understand Dr. Parker's position. I'm showing you right now I understand what he's saying. So, tell the viewers in your next video, Myles, in responding to mine, tell the viewers so they know if this is your position. Because I'm going to use your chart to show you Dr. Parker's position. Your chart. Not mine, your chart right here. Now think about it. Dr. Parker says, and this institution was placed on Saturday. The terminology in words of Dr. Parker is Saturday. That's the word he uses. That's the terminology he uses for this seventh day, he says, is Saturday. Now, Myles, think about it. This is what Justin Martyr taught. The first day in creation was Sunday. And Dr. Parker taught the seventh day in creation was Saturday. Do you agree, Myles? I'm just simply asking, do you agree? Do you agree with Justin Martyr that Sunday's the first day? And do you agree with Dr. Parker that the seventh day is Saturday? Using their terminology, their words, not mine, theirs. I'm making a clear distinction because it's Myles who says I don't understand his position. Well, if he believes the same thing as these guys do, then I understand his position. So don't deflect my questions as being irrelevant. Don't deflect my questions as being you've already answered them. And don't deflect by saying I misrepresent what you teach, what you believe. Because if you believe what they believe, I understand it very clearly. The chart refers to the seventh day, Sabbath day. Down at the right at the bottom here, you'll see that little square there, and next to it, it equals Sabbath day. Now this is Myles' chart that he uses, not mine. This is his. And he says that this is a Sabbath day. And this very Sabbath day, the seventh day, Dr. Parker calls Saturday. But Myles, you teach that Adam and Eve didn't keep the seventh day Sabbath day. You also claim no Sunday Sabbath in Genesis. So I'm going to ask again, what Sabbath day did they keep? If there wasn't a Sunday Sabbath in Genesis, and you want an SDA to bring out a point in case in point that it's the seventh day Sabbath Adam and Eve kept, neither one, then what day did they keep? What Sabbath day did they keep? Now let's go to Dr. Kayser. This gets very interesting. Dr. Kayser says this: we find the most significance and goodness in our work when we honor God's Sabbath. Oh, I agree with that. I agree that the seventh-day Saturday is God's Sabbath. But watch what he goes on to say. Let's see if Myles agrees with Dr. Kayser. See, I find the inconsistencies in the critics. Matter of fact, they all don't agree with each other. Now, you know the difference between Seventh-day Adventists who disagree with each other? You could take Adventist theologians, one may view it this way and another may view it this way, but they discuss it and they talk it over with each other. These guys don't want to sit down and talk their differences. I'd like to see these guys debate. I'd like to see them debate. You see, as Adventists grapple with teachings and doctrinal things, and they're learning things, and they're studying things, they do dialogue with each other on these things. But I don't see these guys debating each other. Why don't they all debate each other? They're all teaching different things. It would seem like they would want to know what the truth is. Wouldn't you agree to that? It seemed like they'd be searching for the truth. So if Myles has the truth, it would seem he would want to show Elsie, this is the truth. Or Sam, this is the truth. You need to follow this. This is right. So they could all be on the same page. Get their differences sorted out. Yeah, I'd like to see a debate with these guys amongst themselves. So he says here, Dr. Kayser, we honor God's Sabbath. Myles, you teach that Adam and Eve didn't keep the seventh-day Sabbath day. That's the one you're challenging an SDA to convince you, that case in point. In the words of Dr. Kayser, he says we honor God's Sabbath. Now let's see if he tells us what this Sabbath is. Well, he says day 7 of God's week was God's Sabbath day. Now, I believe the seventh day is God's Sabbath day. And I believe what Dr. Parker says, that Sabbath day is called Saturday. Dr. Parker said that very thing. And Dr. Kayser says day 7 of God's week was God's Sabbath day. Now, they make a distinction in the chart between God's week and man's week, which I think is a very weak W-E-A-K argument. But he does say day 7 of God's week was God's Sabbath day. And I believe that's the day that Adam and Eve kept. So let's look at the chart. Their chart, by the way, not mine, theirs. Dr. Kayser, in his words, remember, Myles says terminology and words. I need to understand how they use them. Dr. Kayser, in his words, says day 7 of God's week was God's Sabbath day. I agree with that, don't you? So what day did Adam and Eve keep? Remember, Dr. Kayser says we honor God's Sabbath. Now, it's them that make a distinction between God's Sabbath and man's Sabbath. Not me, not the Bible. The Bible doesn't make a distinction. They're making the distinction between God's Sabbath and man's Sabbath. They're making a distinction that the Bible doesn't. Remember, Dr. Kayser says we honor God's Sabbath. He's not saying there we honor man's Sabbath. He's saying we honor God's Sabbath. So Myles, tell the viewers on your next video against me, tell the viewers, I'm going to be looking and watching the whole video, tell the viewers what day is God's Sabbath day on the chart. Tell them what day that is. Your chart, your words, tell them what day that is. Right there on the chart, that 7th day. What day is it? Myles, certainly you don't believe that Dr. Kayser's words mean a Sunday Sabbath is God's Sabbath day of God's week, do you? Let's go back to Dr. Parker for a second. Dr. Parker says this: the true theory, by the way, he's calling his own teaching a theory. Get that? A theory. The true theory undoubtedly is the Sabbath, Sabbaton. By the way, that's the Greek word, Sabbaton. The true theory undoubtedly is that the Sabbath, Sabbaton, as an institution was transferred from Saturday to Sunday at the resurrection. So now he makes a transition. He goes from the seventh day Saturday, from creation, the last day of the week, Saturday, to the new creation that Myles talks about, new creation, that he says I don't understand, to the new creation at the resurrection. That's what Dr. Parker believes. That's what Dr. Parker teaches. That whole transfer theology from the Sabbath to Sunday started at the resurrection. New creation. Myles, what does Dr. Parker mean by the words Saturday to Sunday? How do you understand the words Saturday to Sunday? Because I think it's very clear of what Dr. Parker's saying. The Sabbath was transferred from Saturday to Sunday at the resurrection. So what does Dr. Parker mean by the words transferred at the resurrection? How do you understand these words, Myles? I think I understand them. Old Testament from creation, Saturday, all the way through time to the resurrection. Now a new creation, a new day of worship, Sunday. From Saturday to Sunday. So it seems to me that Adam must have kept Saturday, the seventh day. Well, if I'm wrong, just tell me. I mean, if that's not what Dr. Parker's saying, that it was at the end of creation for the purpose of man's religious purposes and rest. And Adam was in creation. Well, here's my paradigm. Here's my chart. Very simple. Of what we just went through right here with Dr. Parker. Very simple chart. Creation. End of creation, Saturday Sabbath. Saturday from creation to Sunday resurrection, resurrection, Sunday Sabbath. Dr. Parker's point is very simple. The Sabbath at the end of creation is Saturday. And that's the day that Myles says Adam and Eve didn't keep. That he wants an SDA to show him the case in point where Adam and Eve kept the seventh day Sabbath. And that's what he says. That's his words. In reference to bringing out an SDA to make his case. And this Saturday is transferred from Saturday to Sunday when? At the resurrection. Myles, do you understand terminology and words used by Dr. Parker? It seems to me that I think this is really what Dr. Parker is saying. In a nutshell. Very simple. But remember what Myles said. I'm waiting for the SDA that can make the case to me that Adam and Eve's first Sabbath was the seventh day Sabbath. How could it be from Saturday, from creation, all the way to the resurrection, and Adam and Eve didn't keep this first Sabbath, seventh day Sabbath? That's what he says. Then he says, I didn't claim there's a first day Sabbath and a Sunday Sabbath in Genesis. So from creation to the resurrection, it was Saturday. The first Sabbath was the seventh day Sabbath that Adam kept. Right, Myles? What do you think? Now, Myles, tell the viewers, if Saturday is the seventh day according to Dr. Parker. He says, I don't know what Dr. Parker believes. I don't know. I've misrepresented what Dr. Parker believes. Well, it seems to me I made it pretty simple that he believed that that seventh day Sabbath was Saturday at the end of creation for rest and religious purposes for Adam, man being made. And then all the way down to the resurrection. Now we have a new creation, a new day of worship, Sunday. Is that what Parker taught? If I'm wrong, tell me the difference. Myles, it looks like you don't need an SDA to make the case that Adam and Eve's first Sabbath was the seventh-day Sabbath, Saturday. Dr. Parker does that. I don't think Myles has read Dr. Parker's book. Dr. Parker does it. He doesn't need to go to an SDA. Dr. Parker says when man was made, there was, who was that man that was made? Adam. And he says it was Saturday, the seventh day, in reference to the Saturday. And then he says right there, it was instituted on Saturday for Adam. Man. Seventh day. First seventh day Sabbath. Well, now let's go to Dr. Kayser. Dr. Kayser really clears it up. Dr. Kayser says this: every Sunday, not one, not two, he says every Sunday is the day after the seventh. Isn't that amazing? See, by the way, by the time we're done, we're going to see that Myles is confused a lot about these things. He's going to find out that he's not going to be so sure by the time we're finished. I've got a few more videos coming. This isn't the end of it. I got a few more coming. Because we're going to go through this chart in a detailed way. The other videos is more of an introduction type of thing to this subject of what Myles is saying. But we're going to go more in depth, and we're going to see it unfold clearly. But notice what Dr. Kayser says. Every Sunday is the day after the seventh. Myles, do you understand that every Sunday is the day after the seventh? Now, again, these aren't my words. Myles says, I don't understand Dr. Kayser's words, his terminology. Myles says, I don't understand Dr. Parker's use of the words and terminology. Okay? So maybe Myles could help me understand what Dr. Kayser is saying here. Because he says every Sunday is the day after the seventh. So Myles, do you understand that every Sunday is the day after the seventh? So let's go to the chart. Where is this Sunday, the day after the seventh, located on the chart? Tell the viewers, Myles. Answer the questions. See, these guys want me to, if they're going to win me, they're going to have to answer my questions. That's the bottom line. They're going to have to answer my questions. And they don't seem to want to do that. In the video I made, not one critic answered any one of my questions. Not one single critic. Go to the comment section. Not one of them deals with the questions. They took Myles' word for it to say my questions were irrelevant. That's amazing. What a cop-out. What a deflection. Irrelevant. So, where is this Sunday, the day after the seventh, located on the chart? Tell the viewers, Myles, where this Sunday, he says, is the day after the seventh. Put it on the chart. Is it this seventh? Because we see ones after this seventh. Myles, is this the seventh that every Sunday is the day after? This right here? That's man's post-fall week according to the chart. By the way, what's all these numbers? We're going to get to that. What's all these numbers? We'll read the whole thing in our next one. We'll read the whole. By the way, in one of our videos, we're going to really thoroughly go into the Greek and the Hebrew of the New Testament and the Old Testament. We're going to look at that carefully because they say some things about the Greek text and the Hebrew text, and we're going to look at that because I've got some questions for them about the Greek text and the Hebrew text. That's coming in a video. So, My question is, Myles, is this seventh day that every Sunday is the day after? Is this it? Right here on the chart? Is this it? I'm going to show you that what Myles claims and says is different than what his chart says. Incongruent. Not saying the same thing. See, because now what does the chart say? Tell the viewers, Myles, if this is the Sunday after the 7th that Dr. Kayser is referring to. This gets interesting. Now, number one, the first day in man's pre-fall week. You see it there? Number one. By the way, here's a little chart right here for, it's a Sabbath day. That number one is a Sabbath day. Now, number one, the first day in man's pre-fall week is not a Sunday Sabbath in Genesis. Remember, he said, no Sunday Sabbath in Genesis. He doesn't believe there's a Sunday Sabbath in Genesis. What he says and what the chart says is two different things. So, tell me, critics and followers of Myles, which one of the two are you going to believe? Which one of the two? Because they're not saying the same thing. So number one, this number one right here, the first day in man's pre-fall week is not a Sunday Sabbath in Genesis. That is Myles' words. No Sunday Sabbath in Genesis. According to who? Myles. Remember, he said he wants an Adventist to bring out and prove a case and point to him that Adam and Eve kept that first Sabbath, seventh-day Sabbath. So he rules that out. Then he rules out the idea that there's no Sunday Sabbath in Genesis. I'd sure like to know what day they kept. But according to the chart, number one is a Sabbath day. There it is, right there. You see, I'm connecting the dots. Right there it is. His chart, not mine. I'd throw this chart away. I've got another one. If I believed in his position, I would show you the chart that I would put together. And then you would see the difference between the chart I would put together and this. Based on Dr. Parker, based on Dr. Kayser, their actual position. But you know what? This is confusion. Because he doesn't want to deal with these numbers on this chart. And this is the chart they use. But according to the chart, number one is a Sabbath day. So what day is this Sabbath day? That's my question. Oh, it'd be nice if the critics would answer that question. But they're not going to, because they won't answer it, because they're going to see where they're going to go if they answer my questions. And so they just pass it off as irrelevant. Even Dr. Flex, the PhD, it'd be nice if he would answer all my questions. He's the PhD guy. PhD. Didn't answer one of them. Not one. But according to the chart, number one is a Sabbath day. So what day is this Sabbath day? Well, let Dr. Flex come into the picture and answer the questions. Very simple. This is the chart. You know, some of these guys defend anybody that attacks Adventists. I know Myles says I was poisoning the well. Well, look at all the things he says that poisons the well against Adventists compared to what Adventists say that he's saying is poisoning the well. What a cop-out. What a cop-out. Myles, do tell the viewers if this number one is a Sabbath day in the weekly cycle of 7 days according to the chart. Now, remember, this here means it is a Sabbath day. That number one right there is a Sabbath day. According to the chart. So, what day is that Sabbath day? He says it right here, Sabbath day. So that is a Sabbath day. So what day is it? So, Myles, if this number 1 is not a day in the weekly cycle of 7 days, what is it? What is the purpose of all these numbers on this chart? Do tell us, I'd like to know. So if that's not a Sabbath day, then tell us, what are all these numbers on the chart? Explain it. How can you expect a person to understand if you're not going to take it point by point to explain what it means? For clarification. Oh, it's easy to call people ignorant or stupid or dumb. They don't know anything. But it's another thing to explain to them so they can understand what it means. It's on the chart. Myles, is this number 1 a Sunday, the day after the 7th? Well, here's the chart. This is a Sabbath day, and here is a 7th. And these 1s come after the 7th. So what is Dr. Kayser saying when he means every Sunday comes after a 7th? So let's ask the question again, Myles. Is this number 1 a Sunday, the day after the 7th? So here it is. But what about all these other Sabbath days according to the chart? What days are they? Sunday is the day after the 7th. Now, according to this chart, do you see a problem? These don't come after a 7th, do they? Now, you're not even familiar with all this. This is the first time tonight you've even seen this. Correct? First time tonight. Is that amazing? It's a problem, isn't it? Several problems. But think about it. All these are Sabbath days. Right there it is. Sabbath day on the chart. All of these are Sabbaths. Now these number 1s come after the 7th. Like Dr. Kayser says. But these number 1s don't come after the 7th, do they? They don't. Since when does 1 come after 6? I wonder where these guys learned how to count. Kind of like the same people who say we only have to keep 9 commandments, no more 4th commandment, the 10 commandments. No, it's 9 commandments. So don't call it the 10 commandments if you only mean 9 commandments. And of course, when you take the 4th one out, how do you number them? 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Or do you move the 5th one up to the 4th spot? Can you see how man has changed God's law? Makes absolutely no sense. So, what about all these other Sabbath days according to the chart? What days are they? Sunday is the day after the 7th. This 7th day in the first week of creation, Dr. Parker called Saturday. There it is, right there. Saturday. Now, wouldn't it make more sense to say the first day came after the 7th if he would have went right straight across the top? First, second, third, fourth? In weekly succession? This first day in man's pre-fall week is on the same day that Dr. Parker called Saturday, the 7th day. Wow. So now what do we think? How do we make out with this now? Do we make out that number 1 is actually number 7? Or does number 1 mean something entirely different? Isn't that amazing? Remember, every Sunday is the day after the 7th. That would be right here, wouldn't it? Correct? So, Myles, you do agree with Dr. Kayser in this chart, correct? I'd sure like to know that. You really agree with this. But he's not teaching and claiming what this chart is saying. We're just touching the tip of the iceberg right now tonight. As we continue on through more videos, you're going to see clearly by the time we're finished. Not going to be arguing this petty stuff of irrelevant questions, or I've already answered your questions, or I don't understand their position. Now, Myles, if you don't agree with Dr. Parker that Saturday is the seventh day in the first week of creation, do you agree with Dr. Kayser that every Sunday is the day after the seventh? Is this where Sunday would be on the chart, Myles, right here? Because it shows a first day, which is a Sabbath day, after the seventh. Am I making this clear? Can you see clearly what I'm saying here? Do you understand what I'm saying? So is this where Sunday would be on the chart, Myles? And if this is correct, that Sunday is a Sabbath day after the seventh, that's where it'd be right there, wouldn't it? Because it certainly couldn't be this and over here, because these over here are on the same day as the seventh. So it has to be over here. Correct? Now this is their chart, not mine. Don't say I'm misrepresenting the chart. If I'm misrepresenting the chart, then go through these points and help me out. If I don't know what I'm talking about and I'm misrepresenting this chart, then let's clear the air and you straighten this thing out so I can understand it. Because right now I could say this chart is very confusing. And when I read the Bible, it's not this confusing. When I read the Bible on the seventh day that God rested, that's not confusing. Blessed and sanctified, the seventh day. Then the first day in man's pre-fall week is a Sunday Sabbath day in Genesis as well, correct? So Myles is wrong. If he's going by the chart, he's wrong. See, because if this day here is the seventh day Saturday that the Jews kept, and the first days come after the seventh day, okay? How can this be a Sabbath day on the first day and this not be a Sabbath day on the first day in the same week? Because he says that's a Sabbath day right there. Wouldn't this day be Sunday? That's the day after the seventh. Wouldn't this also be a Sunday Sabbath? You tell me. Based on their chart. Then the first day in man's pre-fall week is a Sunday Sabbath day in Genesis as well. Correct? How can the second one, be a Sunday Sabbath without the first number one being also a Sunday Sabbath? And guess where that would be? In Genesis. What he denies. He says, I never claimed that there's a Sunday Sabbath in Genesis. There's some serious problems. Say one thing on one hand and totally opposite on the other. So which of the two horns of the dilemma do you want to be on? The chart or him denying that there's a Sunday Sabbath in Genesis? Because this proves it. Again, think about it. If this is the seventh day Saturday Sabbath the Jews kept, and the first days come after the seventh, then that means, and he's got it highlighted right here, that is a Sunday Sabbath in Genesis. And the first day in man's pre-fall week is a Sabbath day. Is that a Sunday Sabbath day, Myles? Tell us. What is the chart saying? It's your chart. You guys use it. What is it? Denies on one hand a Sunday Sabbath in Genesis, and yet wants to claim on the other hand that the chart is showing the very thing he denies. I call that a contradiction. I call that false teaching. On the other hand, let's look at the flip side. On the other hand, if not, then where is Sunday a Sabbath day after the 7th according to the chart that Dr. Kayser teaches? Where's it at? So Myles, you agree, believe, and teach that this 7th-day Sabbath day in man's post-fall week is Saturday, and that Sunday is the day after the 7th, correct? Right there it is on the chart. Now, if these numbers don't mean days, then take the numbers off the chart. Because that 7th day, Dr. Parker calls Saturday. And that first day, Justin Martyr called Sunday. In that first week. So if none of this is really what they say to the left, God's week, man's pre-fall week, man's post-fall week, Jesus' restoration. Isn't that amazing? Oh, we're going to get into some more stuff. I mean, you're going to see what we talk about these weeks over here. We're going to be talking about that. We're going to see what Myles says about his words on this very thing. So Myles, how could every Sunday be the day after the 7th unless a new and different week started, because the first day in man's pre-fall week doesn't follow a 7th? Correct? Am I right or wrong? So this must be an entirely new week. First on 7th, 1 on 7. Let's talk about these numbers. Hate to tell you this, Myles, but this is exactly what you have done. Started a new week and called it man's week. For this first day does not come after the 7th day. Myles, it is up to you to prove just how every Sunday is the day after the 7th without the numbers on this chart actually being the days of the week correlated to the numbers. Right? Dr. Parker did that. 7th day, Saturday. Justin Martyr did that. First day, Sunday. What about all this other stuff here? How does those numbers correlate with the days of the week? Don't tell me this means the 7th day Saturday, and don't tell me this is the first day Sunday, and it doesn't mean the same thing as this. They need to scrap this chart. They need to get it together. But see, the critics are so much in attacking Adventists, and they think, oh, you're crying, you're playing the victim, you're playing the victim, and you're crying about. No, listen, that's exactly what they do. They don't care whether it's true or false. You're just going to attack Adventists. They don't care. They probably, many of them don't even believe. Even Myles says, well, they don't all agree with what I'm saying. Well, that's right, they don't. But just because you're attacking the Adventists, they're on your side. They don't care what you're teaching. They don't even care what you know about the Bible. You're just attacking Adventists. And they're like hornets. You know, you're stirring the hornet's nest. They just buzz around, troll in, troll out, buzz around, make a comment, and in and out. That's it. Don't know what's all been said. Don't care what's been said. Don't reason through it. Just accept it and attack Adventists. And no, I'm not playing the victim. That's a fact. That's exactly what they're doing. They don't care whether they all agree together or not, in unity of what the Bible teaches. I want the truth. My desire is to know the truth. And if they really cared about my salvation, they would show me the truth. They say Adventists have another gospel. Well, show me the true gospel. I know what I used to be, and I know what God has brought me to now. So I say it's up to Myles to figure out, is there a correlation between these numbers and the days of the week? Myles, it is also up to you to prove just how every Sunday is the day after the 7th, while not following the first number 1 on the same day as number 7. Right there. So Myles, you claim no Sunday Sabbath in Genesis. But your chart that you agree, believe, and teach is something different than what you claim. You could say all you want about you don't claim that there's a first-day Sunday Sabbath in Genesis. But your chart says so. Right there it is. The chart is opposite of what you claim. Sunday is a Sabbath day in Genesis according to the chart. Because, like I said, if these are days, these are days. If these are the first days, Sundays after the 7th, because it's not over here, is it? So it has to be here. This has to be what Dr. Kayser is saying. Every Sunday is the day after the 7th. So if this is Sunday, guess what? This is Sunday. And then you have a Sunday and a Saturday on the same day. Confusion breeds more confusion. I wouldn't be able to defend this. That's what I'm saying. In order for them to convince me, they got to answer my questions. They got to look at the chart and explain what all these numbers are on the chart. That's for starters. And not a one of them has answered one of my questions. Not a one of them. Read their comments. Go to my videos. Go to see what they say in my comments. All they do is attack by name you, me. Personally. Yes. And they call that critique. Calling people liars and pathological liars and deceivers and all those things. Yeah. The chart is opposite of what you claim. Sunday is a Sabbath day in Genesis according to the chart. Now, Myles, if what I am showing about the chart is all wrong, let's just give you the benefit of the doubt. Everything I've said is all wrong. I've totally misrepresented what you believe. So let's be honest, Myles, if it's all wrong, explain it to me so I can understand. Put in your next video this chart. I'm not talking about other videos that you say you explained all this. No. Put this video on your next video. Put this chart on your next video. Put it right there and say, this day means this day means that, this day means this number means this number means that. Don't put all those numbers up there and say they don't have any meaning. They're on there for a reason. And if my reason's incorrect of what these numbers mean, then simply explain it. What do the numbers mean? Where does this statement belong on the chart? Every Sunday is the day after the 7th. I believe it is. But it came that way. You see? And the weekly cycle is how God set it up. The next week should be number 1 after the 7 in the next week. And continually till the end of time. You see? Now, Myles, if what I am showing about the chart is all wrong, then explain each point of the chart's numbers. By the way, if this all looks confusing, well, it is. And I didn't make it confusing. I'm just showing you the arrows of what these numbers are and where they're located. It's simple to believe what the Bible says. God rested the seventh day. God blessed the seventh day. God sanctified the seventh day. Nothing there about the first day. It's that simple. Even the idea that God sanctified the seventh day is the idea of appointing the seventh day. The Bible says God rested on the seventh day. How simple is that? It's not all this confusion. Listen to what Kayser goes on to say, Dr. Kayser. Christ's resurrection establishes a new first-day Sabbath. See, now all the way up to this point, I could agree with what Dr. Parker was saying. Seventh day at the end of creation. Seventh day is Saturday at the end of creation. That's the day that Adam and Eve kept all the way through time. Moses all the way to, then they change it at the resurrection. So now they're going good in the Old Testament, but then when they get to the New Testament, new creation, they do a switcheroo. There's where I stop. Say, wait a minute. Let's think this through. So let's look at this. Christ's resurrection establishes a new first-day Sabbath. Now watch carefully. Viewers, think this through. Let it soak in your mind. Think it through. If you're honest, watch the whole video. If you're honest, go through and answer the questions. It's that simple. Christ's resurrection. By the way, this is his words, not mine. Myles says that I don't understand their terminology. I don't understand the words they use. So maybe Myles could explain to us on his next video what these words mean. Because here's what Dr. Kayser says. Christ's resurrection establishes a new first-day Sabbath. Myles, do tell the viewers just where on the chart is a new first-day Sabbath that Christ's resurrection establishes. Is that a fair question? That's not a trap question. That's simply saying on the chart, where is this? I want to know where it's at. Is it there? Is it right here? Is this it? Right there. Jesus' restoration. Is that number one referring to the new Christian Sabbath? Restoration. Is that it? Is it here? So Myles, you agree, believe, and teach that this day is Sunday, a new first-day Sabbath, that Jesus restores, Jesus' restoration. And this is where they're going to put it. This is where they're going to put it right here. Remember, Myles doesn't believe it's clear back there in Genesis. So what Jesus restores in this Sabbath, we're going to be looking at it too in the book of Hebrews chapter 4. We're going to be looking at that in regard to their chart and what they teach. Hebrews chapter 4. In an upcoming video, so just hang on to that. So Myles, you agree, believe, and teach that this day is Sunday, a new first-day Sabbath that Jesus restores, Jesus' restoration. So is this the new first-day Sabbath? And does it correlate with number 1 on the chart and in sequence with the days that follow in the weekly cycle? I'm going to quote in another study coming up how Myles talks about he doesn't mean 3 different weeks and no weeks have changed in the weekly cycle, just a new day. Well, I'm glad he said that because we're going to see something about that. We're going to see if he really has changed the week or the days in the week in another video. So Myles, is Sunday supposed to correlate with the number 1 on the chart? In other words, is number 1 the first day of the week in the weekly cycle of 7 days? Is this what number 1 means or not? Either yes or no, it does or doesn't. Is the new first-day Sabbath that happened at Christ's resurrection and established the same first day that Jesus restores according to the chart? Now, if it's not, just tell us what it is. Listen to what Dr. Kayser goes on saying. Remember, he's saying, I don't understand these words. I don't understand their terminology, what they mean by that. Oh, I know a lot of people that take Sabbath texts and apply it to Sunday. A transfer theology just simply meant that from the Old Testament was Saturday at creation to the resurrection, a new day, Sunday. Transfer theology. He's going to transfer the Sabbath to Sunday. Saturday to Sunday. Watch what Dr. Kayser says, his words. And if I'm not interpreting his words right or misrepresenting his words, do, on your next video, straighten that out, Myles. These words. In context. Because one thing, and I'm going to get to that as I come to an end, tonight's meetings close, I'm going to show some of the arguments he's going to say in preparation for his next video. I'm going to show you. So listen carefully. But listen to what Dr. Kayser says. To fail to start our week with rest on Sunday is to make the same mistake that Adam made. Well, I find that an interesting statement. This gets really interesting. Their words, not mine. How do you understand this statement, Myles? Oh, you could read the whole context. By the way, in my preparation for some of this, in some of my slides, I have the whole context. But it's so much to read, it'd take a while, so I'd have to split it up. But think about this. He says, to fail to start our week with rest on Sunday is to make the same mistake that Adam made. Myles, do tell the viewers just where on the chart is this rest on Sunday so we don't make the same mistake that Adam made. So show us. Is it this right here? Is it this Sunday? Because remember, this is a Sabbath day. Is this Sabbath day Sunday that Jesus restores? Because we don't want to make the same mistake Adam made. These are Dr. Kayser's words, not mine. All right, so Myles, you agree, believe, and teach that this day is Sunday that Jesus restores. Jesus' restoration. That's what you believe based on Hebrews chapter 4. Am I misunderstanding that? This is what you believe based on Hebrews chapter 4, verses 9 and 10, and verse 8 as well. Myles, was Adam to have started his week on Sunday, or was Adam to have started his week on Saturday? No, because Saturday is the end of the week, not the beginning. Correct? Or does number 1 actually refer to Saturday? So let's plug that in. Is this supposed to be number 1, Saturday, Sabbath day? Remember, Myles said it wasn't Sunday in Genesis, and it wasn't the 7th-day Sabbath. That is confusing, isn't it? Which is it then? What is it? Explain to me what it is. Because even Dr. Parker and even Dr. Kayser understand that Adam kept a Sabbath in Genesis. But according to Myles, neither one of them didn't keep the first seventh-day Sabbath, and didn't keep the Sunday Sabbath. So what did Adam and Eve keep? Myles, is this Sunday the same day in the weekly cycle that Adam failed to keep? First day, Sunday, Sabbath day, and they call it Lord's Day. We're going to get to that too in another video, specifically in regard to the Lord's Day. Myles, was Adam's mistake not resting on the first day, Sunday Sabbath? Or was it Saturday that Adam failed to keep? So one or the other. And he disagrees with both. Or was it Sunday that Adam failed to keep? Which is it, Myles? You don't only have a whole lot to choose from here when you only have 7 days in the week. Let that soak in. 7 days in the week. Pretty simple. Had to be somewhere in there. So which is it? Listen to what he says. Adam and Eve didn't end their week with a Sabbath. They began their week with a Sabbath. Now remember, Dr. Parker said the 7th day, Saturday, is the day in which Adam and Eve rested and participated in religious purposes. But notice what Dr. Kayser says. Adam and Eve didn't end their week with the Sabbath. They began their week with the Sabbath. So my question, Myles, do you agree with Dr. Kayser? He does. I know he's going to say, yes, he does. He agrees with that. Myles, do tell the viewers if a Sabbath that Adam and Eve began with was Saturday or Sunday when you say neither. So what day did they begin with a Sabbath? Very, very relevant question. He's going to pass that. Oh, that's irrelevant. Or I already answered that. Really? Put the chart on your next video and answer these questions. Wouldn't that be nice to see? Even in the comment section by the critics and those who are following Myles. Comment section. Oh, yeah, well, let me answer this question for you. I'll answer you this question right here. None of that. Haven't seen any of that. These questions. You see? So what day did they begin with a Sabbath? Because they did, right there. He's calling that a Sabbath day. So is that Sabbath day the 7th day Saturday Sabbath? Or is that Sabbath day the Sunday Sabbath? Or neither of the two? Which Sabbath day is it? That's the chart. Myles, what day would have been the end of their week, and what day would have been the beginning of their week? Hey, this is what Dr. Kayser is saying. Adam and Eve, we're talking about Adam and Eve now, not somebody else. We're talking about Adam and Eve. Adam and Eve didn't end their week with a Sabbath. They began their week with a Sabbath. Myles, tell the viewers, is this Sabbath that Adam and Eve began with at the beginning of their week, Saturday or Sunday? Or, as you claim, neither. When Adam, oh, this is good. When Adam broke the first Sabbath. Not my words, Dr. Kayser's words. When Adam broke the first Sabbath. Myles, do tell the viewers if the first Sabbath that Adam broke was Saturday, the 7th day. Now remember, you said Adam and Eve didn't keep the 7th day Sabbath, or Sunday, the 1st day. So think about it. Listen to what he says. When Adam broke the first Sabbath, from this point on, worship was at the end of the week. Now, is this end of the week what the Jews kept in that 7th day Saturday Sabbath at the end of the week? But he says from this point on, worship was at the end of the week. So what day would that be, Myles? Saturday or Sunday? Or neither? Just tell us what it is. Remember what Myles said. I'm waiting for the SDA that can make the case to me that Adam and Eve's first Sabbath was the 7th day Sabbath. His words, end of quote, right there. Quote, I didn't claim there's a first day Sabbath and a Sunday Sabbath in Genesis. Now remember your words. These aren't my words. Remember your words, Myles. Tell the viewers if Adam and Eve's first Sabbath was the 7th day Sabbath. Well, what does he say over here? Do I understand you correctly to mean no SDA can make the case that Adam and Eve's first Sabbath was the 7th day Sabbath? Is this your point, Myles? Do I understand your point? Do I understand you correctly to mean that you didn't claim there's a first-day Sabbath and a Sunday Sabbath in Genesis? Is this your point, Myles? Is this your point? Do I understand that correctly? Do I understand you correctly to mean that there is no first-day Sabbath, no Sunday Sabbath in Genesis? Is this your point, Myles? Remember your words, Myles. Tell the viewers that you didn't claim there's a first-day Sabbath, a Sunday Sabbath in Genesis. So, Myles, do tell the viewers, what day did Adam begin with a Sabbath, the first Sabbath that Adam broke, that wasn't the seventh day Saturday or the first day Sunday? I'll be waiting for your answer to that question. If you ignore all my questions, do answer at least one question. This is the one question. If it's neither the seventh day Sabbath or first seventh day Sabbath or Sunday in Genesis, what Sabbath did Adam and Eve keep? Remember, he says when Adam broke the first Sabbath. So, Dr. Kayser is saying Adam was involved with some Sabbath. That's his words. How am I to understand his words? How am I to understand his terminology? So, Myles, don't tell me these questions are irrelevant, and no, you did not answer these questions either. So don't deflect to that. Don't default to that, because that wouldn't be true. Now, viewers, I will tell you what Myles is going to do with what has just been presented. I'm going to tell you what he's going to do. Number one, he possibly will say everything I said was taken out of context. Number two, he possibly will say again that my questions are irrelevant. Number three, he will possibly continue to say that I have misrepresented what he is saying. Now, friends, we have his words and we have the chart. All we got to do is put the two together and see it for yourself. It doesn't take a PhD to go through what I'm doing right here. I'm not a PhD. Never claimed to be a doctor, PhD. But the fact is, let's look at the words and the terminology, and let's look at the chart, and let's see if they fit and match. Number four, he possibly will say that he has already answered my questions. Now, there could be more possibilities. I'm just giving you basically four possibilities. Number one, context. Number two, irrelevant. Number three, misrepresented. And number four, answered. So let's see in his video response to this one if he does any of these things right here. Viewers, you decide. Study it out for yourself. Go through what Myles says. Go through the chart. Do the chart yourself. Do it yourself. You don't have to take my word for it. Study it out for yourself. But at this point in time, they're very far from convincing me that they've got the truth. Very far from convincing me when they don't even answer one of my questions. Very far. So viewers, you decide. Now, let's see how the terminology and words are used by Dr. Parker, Dr. Kayser, and Myles. Let's read the chart. Top left-hand corner. Sabbath and creation. Rooted in creation, rest, and redemption. I'd say those are important subjects, wouldn't you? Absolutely. Go across the top. Before the fall, man started the week on the Sabbath. Now, what day is that Sabbath? After the fall, man ended his week on the Sabbath. After redemption, man starts the week on the Sabbath again. Restoration can only take place of something that already existed. You don't restore something for the first time as something that never existed. So there has to be a connection with Jesus' restoration with something that already existed when you talk about restoration. So let's read the chart. God's week, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Man's pre-fall week, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2. Man's post-fall week. Now this is continuous. Right down the line, continuous. We've read the chart. I don't think Myles can actually explain this chart in detail. However, what explanation he has given does not correlate with the chart, with this very chart. Nor can his followers explain it. I'd like to see them all that are on Myles' side, following Myles, with their comment section, and I'd like to see them explain this chart. I think Myles is afraid to go through this chart and explain each point. I think he's afraid to do that. And I don't think he's ever really done that either. You have week designated as God's week, man's pre-fall week, man's post-fall week. Do the days of the week in the weekly cycle correlate with the numbers on the chart? Either yes or no. It's that simple. It's not complex. It's that simple. Either they do or they don't. In other words, is number 1 of man's pre-fall week actually the seventh-day Saturday? Because they have it on the same day. So why not just call man's pre-fall week the seventh day? Or is number 1 of man's pre-fall week actually the first day, Sunday? Now, according to Myles, he denied either one of them. It's got to be something. Or is the number 1 of man's pre-fall week actually neither Saturday or Sunday? What then does number 1 mean? Now, is my questions reasonable? Is it thinking it through and just reasoning about it? What do you think, viewers? Is it reasonable? Just makes sense to me that you got to figure out what these numbers are and what they relate to and what they correlate with. So what then does number 1 mean? If it's not the seventh day, first seventh-day Sabbath, and it's not Sunday, what does it mean? I don't see that that's an unreasonable question. I don't see that that's an irrelevant question. You see, when I was in college and seminary, when I didn't understand something, I would simply ask a question for clarification. I used to do it all the time. Seminary professors. Dr. Jerry Gladstone was my biblical exegesis class professor. Biblical exegesis. And I ask questions and I say, for clarification, because I want to understand what you're saying. Do you mean this? Or do you mean that? I never ever heard any professor call you ignorant or stupid or dumb because you misunderstood something. I want to know what it means. You understand what I'm saying? Myles says that I don't understand, so Myles, simply for clarification, in spite of my irrelevant questions, bear with me and answer my questions. See? Wouldn't that be a good thing? Doesn't have to be a bad thing, does it? Good thing. So if I misunderstand, help me to understand. In all the Bible studies I've given over the years, I've never told anybody any of their questions are irrelevant, or any of their questions are stupid questions, or dumb questions, or misrepresentations. Not one time. I've had Bible studies with Baptists, I've had Bible studies with Jehovah's Witnesses and Mormons and All different groups. Catholics have never said such a thing. Not one single time to any of them. If this number 1 is not the 7th day or the first day, what day is this number 1? For these numbers on the chart do represent days, correct? Even Sabbath day. That's what the chart says. So what day of the week is this? Right here. They won't even answer their own questions of the things they put on the screen right there. There it is. Before the fall, man started the week on the Sabbath. What day of the week is this? For clarification. I don't want to misrepresent Myles. I do not want to misrepresent Sam. I want to be honest about my studies with these guys. I want to be truthful, so I'm asking the questions. So what day of the week is this before the fall man started the week on the Sabbath? What day is it? Saturday or Sunday? Or neither one? What day of the week is this? After the fall man ended his week on the Sabbath. It would seem like they would simply say, hey, Pastor Jeff, this is what it means. Oh, thank you for telling me. Now I know exactly what you're saying it means. They're not doing that. And if they think they're the only ones that can ask questions, I got news for them. They're wrong. I got plenty of questions to ask. And I just like for the critics to answer them. That's it. So what day of the week is this? After the fall, man ended his week on the Sabbath. What day is it? Saturday or Sunday? Or neither one? Just tell me what day it is. After redemption, man starts the week on the Sabbath again. I really want to know about that. Because Jesus is my Savior. He was crucified and resurrected. And I'll tell you what, I want to know because I don't want to be going the wrong day. So tell us, critics. After redemption, man starts the week on the Sabbath again. Wouldn't that almost sound like it would be the one before the fall? Doesn't it sound like that? They need to tell us what day that is. So what day of the week is this? After redemption, man starts the week on the Sabbath again. Doesn't say nothing about a different Sabbath. It says the Sabbath again. That would imply the same Sabbath that once existed prior. Wouldn't it? Did I misinterpret that? So what day of the week is this? What day is it? Saturday or Sunday or neither? Now we're talking here, after redemption. And I guarantee you, every one of them is going to say that's Sunday. That's the new Sabbath at the resurrection. Tell me if I'm wrong. They're going to say that's Sunday. That's Jesus' restoration right here. Am I wrong? Is that what you would say? Do I know what you teach? So where is this day on the chart? Where's this day on the chart? Remember, this is all on the chart, right? Here it is. Before the fall, man started his week on the Sabbath. After the fall, man ended. After the redemption. So, here it is. There's the chart. I didn't make this chart up. So where's this day on the chart? Where's this day after redemption? Where's this day on the chart? I'm going to tell you where they're going to say that is. Right there. First day Sunday. Oh, wow. If this is first day Sunday, what is all that? Where on this chart is the 7th day Saturday Sabbath transferred to the first day Sunday Sabbath at the resurrection, the new creation? Answer the question about the new creation and the resurrection. That's your thing, Myles, the new creation. Oh, I believe in new creation. I believe when we come to Jesus Christ as our personal Savior and we accept Jesus as our Savior. Oh yeah, I believe in redemption. I believe in the resurrection. I believe in the power of the resurrection. I believe in the gospel. The good news. So where on this chart is the 7-day Saturday Sabbath transferred to the First-Day Sunday Sabbath at the resurrection, the new creation? Where's it at? In other words, give all these Sabbath days with their number and what day they are in the weekly cycle by name. So you got all these Sabbaths on the chart. Tell us what day they are. I'll be waiting to hear the answer to that question. And that's just the second one, because I know they're not going to answer the questions. But for an honest, sincere heart out there looking for the truth, answer the questions. Take the chart, answer the questions. Now there's going to be more videos will be coming. Got some more to talk about in this chart. Going to go deeper. We're going to get also into the Greek and the Hebrew in an upcoming video of the weekly cycle of the New Testament and the Old Testament. So keep that in mind in upcoming videos. But I would really like to see the critics dive in and answer my questions. They must not be too concerned about my salvation, because if they were, they would be saying, hey, you know what? Let's take that guy up on that and answer some of those questions and see what we come up with. I think that would be the thing to do. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we just want to thank you so much, Lord. We thank you for watching over us. We thank you for your grace, your mercy. And we thank you for the leading of your Holy Spirit as we study your word together. In the lovely name of Jesus, we pray. Amen.